electronics don't interfere anymore.
No.
They only help when it's needed, whereas in the past maybe they did interfere a bit early and intervene. But yeah, now if you're riding well, you won't even know they're there. Oh, there's lots of cool technology on these bikes now that it's all there to assist the rider. And I think number one thing we always emphasize, there's no right or wrong. We don't want to tell you need to be in this mode. Or the big thing is you need to understand the bike and understand these modes for yourself, so you can choose the correct mode, the correct setting for whatever your riding ability is, whatever the surface is you're riding on, the conditions, all that stuff. So your best bet is to spend some time trying to understand it all. That will help. A lot of it is pretty self-explanatory. So when they went to a mode system, it was literally 10 years ago now. It's pretty crazy. And that's the year we started with BMW. So we dropped in on GSs right when they got really cool. And and what happened was they basically had off-road and on-road calibrated ABS and traction control systems. That was the big change that year. And also the mode system, which means you just had to change a mode. And in the background, when you change a mode, the ABS setting changes, the traction control setting changes, your throttle sensitivity changes because it's electronic throttle, and your suspension adjustment changes. So rather than having to change all those things individually, which is what you would have had to do in the before that, even if it was possible, which it wasn't totally, you would have been winding a preload knob on your shock and lots of different things. But now you just switch through that mode system and that adjusts those 4 different settings in the background. So your on-road riding modes: rain mode, road mode, dynamic pro if we want to get technical, but really it's 3 modes: rain, road, dynamic, and pretty self-explanatory. Rain is when the electronics on the bike are at their most sensitive. So they're going to do everything they can to help you keep your wheels underneath you when it's wet and slippery. So ABS is very sensitive, traction control is ultra sensitive. The suspension will become pretty soft to try and help the bike get better traction. And your throttle sensitivity becomes very mellow. So it feels like it takes power out of the bike, but it doesn't. It's just the way the power comes on. It helps it be a lot smoother. So that's rain mode. Road mode is your general riding mode. That's what most riders will spend most of their time in, or they should. And dynamic is more of a sport mode where the bike will feel much more responsive. The throttle is very sensitive. Your suspension firms up. Your ABS relaxes a little bit. It's still there, but it won't intervene as aggressively as it will in rain mode. And then traction control is relaxed a little bit too. It is definitely still there. But you can get enough wheel spin to leave a black line on the road out of a corner, no problem at all. In rain mode, you won't do that. They would just not allow any slip of the rear tire whatsoever. In dynamic, the other end of the scale, it will allow quite a bit. So to the point where you've got to be careful. If you think you got traction control on, which you do in dynamic mode, if you're leant over maybe out of a real tight first gear switchback on a back road, a lot of lean angle first gear, lots of response out of the throttle, and you snap the throttle while it's leant over, it'll allow enough wheel spin to put you on the ground, even though traction control is activated. That exact same scenario in rain mode, most likely that's not going to happen because it will not allow the rear wheel to break loose at all. So you can change all that on the fly, and then you go to off-road modes, which is 2 off-road modes, Enduro and Enduro Pro. So you've got 3 road modes, 2 off-road modes. And when you go to the off-road modes, the same stuff is changing in the background, but it switches over to systems that have been calibrated for off-road riding where there's less grip. Okay, so if you go on a gravel road in rain mode and you jump on the brakes, everything's too sensitive. The bike will feel like it has no brakes. Has anyone ever felt that on a motorcycle before? No? Or even maybe in, not your own car, maybe a rental car on the dirt. And you jump on the brake pedal and it feels like there's rocks in the calipers. It doesn't want to stop. That's your ABS. So if it's not calibrated to the surface, it'll feel like you can't stop. And that's what happens in road mode, off-road sometimes. So it's great to have systems that are made for that less traction, where it will allow a little bit of basically wheel lockup before it releases the brake, and it gives it time to bite into the surface and actually slow you down very well. So that's the electronics as far as the modes go. And I think it's just good to emphasize they're so refined now. If you're riding well and you're in the correct mode for the conditions, you shouldn't feel them at all on the bike. You shouldn't go, oh, traction's annoying, it keeps intervening. If you're in an enduro mode on a gravel road and you feel like traction control is always intervening, it's your right hand. It's not the electronics. It's that. Because you're snapping it, and if traction control is not there on a big bike like this and you're that aggressive, you're probably going to end up on your head if you turn it off. So yeah, it really works well with good riding technique, and it doesn't intervene and get in the way like it might have done 5, 6, 10 years ago.
Just to add something on top of that too, a lot of riders on a safari, for example, they'll go into enduro mode while they're off-road, and then when we jump back on bitumen, they're like, oh, we might only have 20k of bitumen to get to the next dirt, so they leave it in enduro mode. That's a really, really bad habit. We definitely, the minute we're on dirt and we see bitumen coming, even if it's for 500 meters, we'll switch back to road mode, because it's so easy for it to catch you out if you're in the wrong mode, if some wildlife jumps out or anything. There's a lot of reasons why you should make a good habit of switching back into the right mode for the conditions you're in, because they're not a gimmick, they work really well. When Shane goes to rain mode now, braking as hard as you possibly can before you get to this, that absolutely should, the wheel should slide across that. It should be a problem, but hopefully it's not.
Stand behind the car.
Yeah, doesn't even do anything. Okay. That was enduro mode, okay? So can't lock the rear wheel. You can see it little locks, but it releases. So once again, assists in pulling you up very quickly. Now Shane will switch to Enduro Pro, which deactivates ABS on the rear but keeps it on the front. So this is where you could get in real trouble in the wrong environment. If you are on the dirt in Enduro Pro and you get to a bitumen section and you go, oh, it's okay, I'll just leave it in Enduro Pro, which a lot of riders do, and we try to encourage them not to. If you just leave it in Enduro Pro and for whatever reason you need to brake really hard, emergency, you can see that rear brake just locks. And once it's locked, you're just a passenger. It almost builds speed.